that's the kind of stuff I like to read because I feel like
Sure.
reality is stressful enough. For me, I don't get a catharsis from reading about really grim, dark things. I'm like,
Yep.
if I need that, I can watch the news. So,
Yeah, my God, yes. Right.
so I'm just like, if I'm gonna write a, made up story, let me write about like fun stuff.
I get the wonderful opportunity to talk to the incomparable JCM Berne. Joe, hello. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Nicholas. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So, Joe, writing under the name JCM Berne, has written the Hybrid Helix trilogy that starts with the book Wistful Ascending. Ooh. I really like your covers, actually. I mean,
Chris
right?
Mc,
Right?
Chris McGrath. He's so very very poor business decision on my part, but kind of a funny story. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I wrote this book. I need a cover, and I can't. I'm not. I know myself. I know my limitations. I don't know art. So I literally look behind me on my shelf. I don't have a shelf anymore, but I did at the time. And I'm like, what books do I have whose covers I like? Like Harry Dresden. So I pick up like the Harry Dresden. I'm like, who did this? I like these covers. They're cool. I Google it, Chris McGrath. I search for him, send him an email like, will you do covers for me too? And he said yes, and I was just shocked. I never thought in a million years he would do it, but he will. He's an artist, right? He's got to make a living. If you
Sure,
pay him
sure.
money, he'll make a
Yeah.
cover, and he's done fabulous covers. I actually like this one even more. That's the giant shark in the background, and I love this
Oh,
cover.
dang.
I put giant sharks in the
Sure.
book, so he put him on the
Gotta have
cover.
it. Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
when I described the cover to him, he's like, "So it's like a joke, right? Like it's meant to be like campy." And I'm like, "No, no, it's dead serious. The sharks, which they are, they're not like funny at all or goofy. They're not meant to be. Someone might think they're stupid, but they're not meant to. They're meant to be for. They're not played for a laugh." And
Yeah.
Chris was like, "Oh, okay." And that's what he came up with a phenomenal, like totally scary shark for the cover. So he's a fantastic artist, and it's great to work with him. It's just probably not a
Nice.
smart business decision because when you're making like indie level sales and you're paying a guy who's a trade wages, it's you have to sell a lot of books to pay for the cover. But
Yeah, well, I mean,
anyway,
covers are important in selling books, but
they are.
yeah, not campy. So no frickin' sharks with frickin' lasers on their
No,
heads.
no, no, no lasers on their heads. But maybe in another
So,
book, I could always
right?
pump them up for book 7 or something.
Is it so? You've written the Hybrid Helix trilogy. You've got a couple short stories that are in the same universe. People can also find you on YouTube as JCM Berne.
Hmm.
Uh, is the Hybrid Helix story complete, or are you thinking of like
Oh,
no?
no, 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 no. I kind of jokingly, it's structured a lot like Harry Dresden. Okay, so I
Okay,
don't know if you're familiar with the Dresden Files, but
so
each book is a standalone. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. The books
right,
end.
right.
Every book does. There's no real cliffhangers, but there's an overarching story that continues. There are overall changes and developments from book to book. There's
Mm-hmm.
lore is introduced and expanded upon in each book, and my plan is to write a whole lot of them. And
Nice.
I don't have a specific number. I always tell people 25 because that just sounds crazy, but it really might be. But I don't actually have a plan for like, oh, and then in book 23 this will happen. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have that set up, but I have a general idea of where I want the story to go, and it's going to be a lot. So
Yeah.
that is the plan. So we're
Well,
nowhere
there.
near. I'm book 4. I just finished the 72,000 words today in book
Damn.
4.
Nice.
So
Congrats.
thank you.
Yay.
Yeah. So that should come out in it goes to my editor in July, which means it should be available by October at the latest, maybe September, depending
Awesome.
on stuff and what
Yeah.
whether I get my act together with like the final editing and the
Yeah.
cover and all that. But yeah, so book 4 and then book 5 is loosely plotted, and I have another book coming out this summer, which is a separate thing, not in the Hybrid Helix, like a one shot. But
Wow.
yeah, I got when Wistful Ascending got I lost Spiffbo in the first round, and it kind of broke my heart. So because I just I thought it would go further, and I was wrong. So I was like, well, maybe my problem was it wasn't a fantasy. So I can write a fantasy novel, darn it. So I did. I kind of hate wrote a whole book, and
Hate road.
uh,
Yeah.
well, I don't know.
Stupid reviewers.
Yeah,
They don't know.
fantasy.
Show
I'm gonna write a
them.
fantasy
Right.
novel. I'll make it grim. I didn't really make it very grim because I can't. But I had got an idea for a story. I wrote it in like 2.5 months. It's gotten really positive reception from the people who've read it. So we'll see. I'm gonna. I'm gonna get
Wow. Okay.
but
Okay.
imagine if it starred Michelle Yeoh and it was set on Cradle. So
Okay. Like,
older woman with
yeah.
serious, like crazy martial arts skills, like and supernatural
Yeah.
martial arts skills.
Right.
Kids are kidnapped, and she f's up a whole continent to get them back. That's the story. That's the whole pitch. And then
Do you need you have an arc? I wonder if that actually that does sound fun. That's a
I
good.
will if you want to read it. I will happily send out arcs. But
That
it's
sounds fun.
but I write superhero stories, but there's a lot of the people in the
Right.
reviewing community. They're like, I don't know. There's I don't want to say a bias, but maybe
No, I
people
think
don't
like
take
people probably turn their nose up to it, right? They think
they
like,
don't
oh,
take
superhero.
they don't think you're writing a serious thing. They think you're writing kind of like you're writing for comedy or you're writing like a rip off somehow. I don't know. Or
Right.
maybe I'm just talking to the wrong people, which is entirely possible. But people I talk to, they're always like I got so tired of hearing this wasn't a book I normally would have read, but someone recommended it, and I'm like, I wish we could get past that first part. So I was like, I'm gonna write a book where when you first hear the pitch, you want to read it.
Yeah.
So that was the goal. So we'll
I think,
see.
well, I mean, it sounds like you nailed it. Can I tell
Thank you.
you, first of all, well,
Yes.
for listeners, probably many listeners are already familiar with what Spiffbo is, but if you're not, it's the self
Ah,
published fantasy blog off. So it's like a big competition for fantasy books and that sort of thing, which is super cool. And if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. Um,
100%.
but I'm a little jealous because you said you wrote that book in 2.5 months. Oh my gosh. Like, I wish I could do
Well,
that.
I don't know. It was one of those. I got the idea, and a lot of things just kind of. I got lucky, and it's always and I'd already written like three other books in the last 3 years, so I feel
Hmm.
like you get better at it. You kind of figure
Right.
out like what you need to do and how you need to structure stuff. And I was
Right.
really motivated. It was a very strange experience. Like I said, I really wanted to write a real fantasy book, and then I made it weird. I probably made it. I'll probably enter it in Spiffbo 10, Spiff Box. We have to
Spiff
call it Spiff
box. Oh,
Box.
that's
Well, it's if
funny.
X for
I
the
like it.
Roman numeral 10. So I'm trying to get everyone to call it Spiff Box, which has not caught on yet. But
Yeah.
I'm really working it in every avenue I have. So I'm going to try to get that. I can't meet the deadline for Spiffbo 9 because that's
Yeah.
like in 10 days.
Yikes.
I think it's the 17th. Anyway, not the point.
Have you heard of the other one, the self-published science fiction contest? I believe.
Space fic.
Well, so
Space
I was
space
listening to it.
fic, or you could change that final vowel. I think I'm gonna vote for space fic because because
Yeah, yeah,
I'm losing that battle as well. Unfortunately,
yeah. Right.
the vowel switch version is getting more
Yeah,
traction than
yeah,
mine. I'm very
yeah.
sad to say. I
The
think it
one
should be
with a
space
U
fic.
instead of an
Yes,
I was
yes.
yeah. I was like
But
just hearing that all
that was
over a podcast.
oh, I know who said that first, I think. Oh, he's an author and I totally am blanking on his name. But I think I saw that happen on Twitter live when someone
That's
tweeted, or maybe it was I can't remember.
anyway.
Um it's going to bother me. I'm going to have to look up
So
who said that. Anyway. So,
so
so
the
I,
hybrid
I was
helix
in Space
stories.
Fic. This was in Space Fic as well, and I
Oh,
also
really?
lost in the first round. And then I was very sad.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
still hurt. It still stings. But what are you gonna do? It's
yeah.
a contest. You're putting your book out there, and like no book is beloved by every reader. That's never gonna happen.
That's
So
right.
just
And you
if the judges get the wrong impression, if you just get the wrong group of judges. I mean, I've had some space fic judges tell me they loved my book. Right. So
there you
people who
go.
are
Right.
judging that contest, they just weren't the ones who got my book in the first round. So I'm like, it's just like it's just. I mean, there's no alternative. You can't take 300 books and make every judge read every book. Like that's just not
No.
that's not physically possible. So we'd
Right.
like that. That'd be nice. It'd be more fair in a way, but it's not possible. So
Right.
what are you gonna do? So anyway,
So and you
enough
write.
whining.
Yeah, you've had those good reviews. You've written,
Yeah.
good books. There's superhero stories, and they're high fantasy, and you describe them as hope punk, and I love that idea. So tell me a bit about like why hope punk and why superheroes.
Okay. So those are two excellent questions. I'll start with the hope punk. So okay. So I don't necessarily want to assume that I have the right to define hope punk. Other people use that term in their own way, and I don't want to argue with anybody. But what I mean by it is just not grimdark. Okay. Okay.
Sure.
So it's
Well,
because,
like, but not just, but like the antithesis of
or
grimdark, right?
close to it. So okay. So again, I'm a very definition oriented person. So when someone says like, "What's grimdark? What's science fiction? What's fantasy?" I'm a former philosopher. Did graduate level work in philosophy for years. I really want to nail down those definitions because otherwise I can't think about things. So for me, grimdark is fantasy where the people are generally bad. Okay, so if you compare it to like Tolkien, like most of the hobbits, most of the humans were like good, upstanding people. Maybe they had flaws and weaknesses, yes, but they were generally underneath it all good people trying to do the right thing, standing up against evil. And that was sort of the standard for a long time in fantasy, right? Like Terry Brooks stuff, even Wheel of Time. Most people, sure, there were people. So then Grimdark came along, like Joe Abercrombie people were like, most people are crappy people. The heroes weren't very good people. The common people weren't very good people. People were generally bad or at least not great. And to me, that's what Grimdark. And then all the other stuff that Grimdark happens in Grimdark is sort of a consequence of that. You're going to have things like a lot of potentially sexual violence in Grimdark, which a lot of Grimdark is sort of known for. Because if everyone's bad, people are going to get raped, right? Like that sort of goes along with it. You're going to have a lot of like gritty violence. If people are bad, they're going to do gritty things. They're going to torture each other. And there's a lot of good reasons for people to like grimdark. Like I'm not trying to shade the genre, right? I understand. I'm one of these times I'm going to do a video on why, but there's all kinds of totally valid reasons for people to prefer that. A lot of people think it's more realistic, right? And they, non grimdark, it's too much suspension of disbelief. A lot of people just they like the gritty when your heroes like torture the bad guys. It can be satisfying in a way that if your heroes are good people and they just lock them in prison, it can feel empty, right? Depending on the
That's
mood you're in, right? So there's
yeah, yeah.
reasons.
Fair. I didn't
Yeah,
want Prince Joffrey in the Game of Thrones show to like have a pleasant, ending.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
no, no, no. He needs
yeah,
bad things to happen.
yeah. So grimdark is most people are crap. Okay, and that's my definition, and that fits most of people culture. And I'm like, well, as a, as a person, like as I'm not saying that's unrealistic. I'm not going to
Hmm.
say people are all lovely, right? That's clearly not. But I'm like, well, if I'm going to write a book and it's going to be a science fiction or a fan, let me make people pretty good. And generally
Yeah.
speaking, the main character is like a guy who's basically has flaws, but is generally trying to do the right thing. And he's surrounded by people who may have flaws and they may have conflicts because they have, different worldviews and they have different, conflicting desires. But they all are generally trying to do the right thing. And some of them have been traumatized and they do the wrong thing because of traumas, but they're trying to do better. And I just filled the book with that. And if you read in the three books, there's almost no characters who are genuinely like evil. The closest you get is there are creatures who are sort of damaged to the point where they, lash out in blind rage and but for reasons. And I'm just like, if I could fill a book with that, let me fill a book with that. And
Yeah.
people were like, it was almost like a challenge to me. It was almost like I heard people saying, "Oh, if the characters aren't all grim and morally gray, you can't write a good story." I was like,
Yeah.
let's see, let me try, because I'm an
Right.
arrogant, son of a gun. So
Sure.
I'm like, I think I can. I don't know. I mean, and I'm sure some of those people
Well.
would read my books and be like, no, no, you didn't do it, right? It's crap, and that's fine, right? But that was my goal. My goal was to have a sort of the main character and his friends are generally people you'd want to hang out with, and I get
Right.
that in feedback. If I read all my reviews, which is not a good idea. But people say that they say like I'd like to have dinner with these guys, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
people don't say that to Joe Abercrombie. Or
Yeah. Right.
maybe
Right.
maybe
Right.
someone does, but
Yeah.
most
Worry
no
about
no
those people. Right.
yeah right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by hope punk, is that
Right.
generally the characters are trying to do the right thing. The characters, you should have a feeling when you read my books that the main characters are going to win. The costs may be present but won't be too extreme. Like they're not
Sure.
going to, half of them won't die, they won't lose limbs, they're going to be
Sure.
okay. They're going to win. There will be tense moments, but they won't be that tense. So right? Because that's the kind of stuff I like to read because I feel like
Sure.
reality is stressful enough. For me, I don't get a catharsis from reading about really grim, dark things. I'm like,
Yep.
if I need that, I can watch the news. So,
Yeah. For God. Yes. Right.
so I'm just like, if I'm gonna write a, made up story, let me write about like fun stuff. And again, dark things happen. There are difficulties because you have to, otherwise there's no story. It's not,
Sure.
it's not, it's not like Legends and Lattes, right? It's not truly like what do they call that? Cozy. It's not a
Cozy.
cozy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not writing a cozy. I might have if I thought about it. I don't know. I didn't want to write a cozy. I didn't. It's not. These are not cozies. There is some significant violence, but yeah, you should
Sure.
feel like the characters are going to win, and they're going to be decent people. Like and everyone around them will be for the most part. Like I have a whole space station, and most of the people on it are pretty cool.
Which I
You
think is
know?
great. And again, like I think those people that are saying you can't have good characters unless they're morally gray, I would say I would present them. What about Captain America,
Yeah.
Superman? Like these are wildly popular
Well,
characters, you know?
but there are people who really think Superman is a terrible character because he's so goody goody, and that's one reason people like Batman a lot more, or many people do, right? That's that whole tension, and I
So
and
this
yeah,
is a perfect segue though. Like I
yes,
imagine your love of superheroes and like again your main characters in your main character in your story is a superhero,
yeah,
but your love of superheroes goes way back to childhood and I think comics, right?
oh yeah. So I've been reading comics very seriously since I was about 10. So like that's for not as much recently just 'cause I ran out of space and I ran out of money and all kinds of stuff. But I mean I had a good 30 plus year run of really going to the comic store every week and getting like a whole bunch of comics. More of a Marvel guy than a DC guy. I read a lot of Independents when that
That was
got
my
big in
next
the mid
question.
'80s. A Marvel guy all the way.
Yeah.
I've read some DC stuff, but it's not my thing.
Yeah.
I always like the slightly grittier street level stuff from Marvel, like the Moon Knight, the Iron
Oh,
Fist,
right.
the Power Man. Daredevil, like I always like that the
Mhm.
martial arts oriented stuff from the mid '80s. So, but I also like the space stuff, like Jim Starlin, like the Warlock, the Thanos, the early Thanos stories.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, again, I'm 52. Like I've read a lot. I can go
Mhm.
on because I mean, when you read comics every week for 30 years, there's a lot of
There's a
comics
lot of
that
yeah,
you
yeah.
can pull out. I have all the, a lot of boxes of stuff. I read a lot of manga before they were popular. Um, so yeah, I got into superheroes because I would say superheroes are to me a lot of what I like about fiction and about genre fiction is like the sense of empowerment. In my regular life, I'm not a very powerful person, right? Like if I
Sure.
see some injustice in the world, there's almost nothing I can
Yeah.
like. I
None of us are Superman powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I can write a check to like some organization that helps defeat this thing, but it's not really much I can do, right? So
Right.
we like stories about people who can make things happen,
Right.
right? And there's all kinds of ways that like it's why we like mob stories. Like this is I'll tell you my favorite my favorite example. Do you ever watch The Sopranos?
I
You know what it
actually
is.
didn't. Like
Okay, okay,
I am
okay.
familiar, of
But you
course. So yeah,
you you
yeah.
know what it is. It's about a mob
Yeah.
boss, right? And he's a bad
Yeah.
guy. That's the thing. He's a bad guy. He's in a restaurant with someone, I think his wife, and there's a nice place, right? Tablecloths, and there's a kid sitting there, a young man with his hat, baseball cap on his head, and Tony looks at this kid. He's like Tony Soprano, the mob boss, big dude, right? Also like a mob boss, and he goes to the kid. He's like, "Take your hat off," and like the kid's like, "Who are you to tell me?" And he's like, "Take your hat off," and like he's this close to making a phone call and that kid never sees his home again, right? If he doesn't take his hat off. And the kid can kind of sense it and the kid takes his hat off. And I'm like, if I'm in that situation, I'm not likely to say anything. I'm not going to throw punches with some 20-year-old kid over a baseball cap. And I'm not even sure I should. Like
Yeah.
right, like that's not really appropriate behavior. I'm a civilized human being, but there's something so satisfying about a guy who's got connections and he's got this power. It's not a superpower, right? But he
Sure.
can make a phone call and this kid disappears. it's so viscerally satisfying. And I'm like, man, like someone like double parks where you're like in front of your favorite deli, you make a phone call,
Yeah,
and like
right, right.
I just drive around the block and find another spot, because I'm not a mob boss, right? I don't
Yeah,
have.
because
So
we're normal people. Yeah,
so
yeah.
criminals get this power by refusing to accept the boundaries of society, right? Like if you're a mob boss, you're saying I can make things happen the way they should because I don't care. I can make this guy disappear.
Yeah.
I'm okay to break the law where you're not. So that's a kind of power. And superpowers do it with like because they can fly because they live under a yellow sun, even though that makes no sense. Or they have a green they have a magic ring from an
Right,
alien race or whatever,
right.
So I like stories about people who can affect the world. So I like stories
Yeah.
about superheroes. I like stories about like not just swordsmen, but like unbelievable swordsmen, like Elric of Melniboné, who can like slaughter an entire army with his magic, soul drinking, not a real swordsman. Like that's boring because real
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
swordsman, you're up against like four guys, you're dead, right?
Right.
But I don't like that stuff. I like the crazy stuff, like a lone wolf and
Yeah.
cub, right? A guy walking around with a
Yeah.
baby cart, and he's got a baby in the cart, and then he's got a machine gun under the cart, and he kills like 100 ninjas at once. Like that's awesome. So
A
that's
little
the
bit
kind of
of a little
story
bit
I
of
like to read.
Mandalorian vibes there.
Well, yeah, well that's yeah. People are always like, "Oh, Mandalorian's ripping off like westerns." Like, no, he's ripping off like samurai stories. Who are ripping off westerns? Who are ripping off samurai? Like that's all the same
Right.
stuff. But
Right.
I love the Mandalorian, by the way. I really like. I don't know if it was good, but I really liked it.
I also really like it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, besides Rohan from your books, of course, who is your favorite superhero?
I don't. People ask me my favorite things, and I'm like, I never know. It depends on what day of the week you get me. Um,
Maybe
okay.
top
I
three?
can tell you who's been super influential. Okay, so like there are superheroes
Mm-hmm.
who like the visuals I really like. Like I've really always loved the way Iron Fist looked in the comics. The TV show is a travesty, but the comics, the way he like the visuals. I like martial arts type heroes a lot. Master of
Mm-hmm.
Kung Fu meant a lot to me. Shang-Chi, right? The movie came out, but I was a fan
Mm.
of the comics. I love the stories. I read those like every time if I got sick when I was a kid, I'd read the whole run
Wow.
I have all the originals. I have the hardcover reprints, which they can never reprint again, because in the comics, his father was Fu Manchu, who was who's a Sax Romer like detective story villain. It's nothing to do with martial arts, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Marvel doesn't own the rights to Fu Manchu, so they can't reprint any of those comics anymore. So I got it
Ah,
when they reprinted them. I got the hardcovers, and now you can't buy them anymore. So it's one of my prized possessions. Um,
nice, nice.
who else? I liked a lot. I was a big fan
I
of that kind of Nexus. Nexus was an independent from first, and he had a power set more similar to Rohan's. And he could fly. He lived on a moon, like in space, and he got powers from an alien who would basically force him to go and like kill mass murderers. And if he didn't do it, he would get like blinding headaches and eventually die himself. So he was kind of a tool of vengeance. It was a cool comic. The first issue came with a record, or the third issue, I forget. One of the first three issues came with a record, like a record.
yeah,
This is how
yeah.
old I
You
am,
put
right? It
sure.
came like it
Well,
was
I
like a
mean,
soft floppy record. Came in the center. You take the record, you could put it on.
yeah.
You had to put it on cardboard so your record player would recognize it. You put it on your record. You could actually play a soundtrack to the comic.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that was
That's
cool.
actually super
This
cool.
is like this is
I
like
also
early
like
'80s.
I am a big nerd in many ways, as you already know. But like I'm not like a big comic nerd. I didn't know that like hardcover comics are a thing. Like is that a common thing or
All the companies have done like collected editions like as reprints,
uh-huh.
and
Okay.
some of them are hardcovers, right? So they make them for a
Okay.
premium price. So like
Yeah,
those
yeah.
Master Kung Fu hardcovers, they were like fat and they had a hardcover and
Yeah.
it's like a premium edition, right? They were like
Yeah.
$150 for like 30 issues or something crazy,
Okay.
and so it was like it was an investment, but like I wouldn't say they were so good in a sort of objectively speaking, but they meant a lot to me. Like it's
Sure.
the stuff
No.
it meant so much to me as a kid that I can't even think about it like objectively. Like would I tell you like you have to read these? I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that to anyone else. But it meant a lot to me. So
No,
So
I
yeah,
get it. Yeah,
yeah.
like my go-to for that is I loved the like Ninja Turtles '90s
Mm,
movies, but then I went and like tried to rewatch them. And I'm like, these do not hold up. These were
no,
way funnier when I was like
yeah.
6. You know,
A
like
lot. I've reread quite a few of the things that I read when I was like 10, and
yeah.
it's often ugly. So I was a big fan of the original TMNT, which was kind of dark and like a satire on like very specific Marvel properties that they were
Mm,
making fun of Daredevil and X-Men, and it was so weird to me to see kids picking these up like and watching the cartoon, no idea what they were ripping off. They were,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they were satirizing X-Men and and Daredevil stories, and it's like you guys just think these are cool characters. You're not understanding like why they
But
like
yeah.
they're in the sewer. They get like the radioactive stuff. That's like Daredevil in the street that it bounces off of, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
like they're like tying him into his origin story. That's where the turtles came from. It's like we're pretending there were turtles like in the sewer next to him when he got blinded and got his powers.
Right.
And I'm like, these kids have no idea. So it's always kind of weird. I mean, it's
Yeah.
great. It's great. I'm not complaining, but it's funny. It's funny.
That's all, I love when there's like deeper levels there where
Yeah.
you can enjoy it like kind of
Yes.
on its own, but then yeah, if you have the extra context.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, you grew up with loving the superheroes and whatnot, and then you get to college and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna get a graduate degree in philosophy. Should I be calling you Doctor Byrne, by the
I
way?
never finished my PhD. I'm ABD. So I did a bachelor's in philosophy, and then I did 3 years of grad school, and I basically dropped out. I liked
Wow,
it, but not
not
enough
enough
to
to quite.
work
Yeah,
hard enough to get my doctorate. I don't know if,
sure.
yeah. So
Plus, it's not
so
like a doctorate in philosophy opens up a lot of career opportunities. Let's be real.
it
You know.
was at that. Okay, so it was at that period where philosophy departments across the country were predominantly white males and in a real rush to try to diversify, which I
Change that. Yeah.
understand. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
complaining. I'm not saying they were wrong to do that, but I was basically told that if you're like a white dude,
Yeah.
your chances of getting a faculty position anywhere is like almost none, and any motivation I had to finish was pretty much evaporated. And I was kind of lazy, and I don't know. It's all excuses, but I did not finish. I loaded trucks for UPS for a while. I did all kinds of stuff.
Right. And you were honestly like sometimes I think of like a nice job to have that while I'm thinking about like riding and loading trucks for UPS sounds pretty good because I imagine like I mean obviously there's maybe some quality of life issues that it doesn't like, help with. But in terms of like you probably have a lot of time to think about your stories while you're loading trucks, you know?
There are advantages, right? First of all, UPS is, I think it still is. I haven't really kept up. It was a great job because they were Teamsters. You were unionized and you had
Mm-hmm.
excellent benefits. You had really good pay, really good benefits. The biggest problem was there were two. Well, one is you were working overnight, and that's hard on your body because you have to load the trucks in the middle of the night, right? Because they have to leave at
Mm-hmm.
8 a.m. to go deliver packages. You're
Mm-hmm.
not working during daylight hours, and that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just that kind of physical labor just has a long-term orthopedic cost. Like everyone I knew there who was like 45 or 50, they were hurting.
Yeah.
They were hurting in a way that like other jobs don't make you hurt because
Yeah.
you're hustling, your whole shift. Those guys work very hard. You don't necessarily we don't see it because they're in a facility, right? But the drivers also work really hard. But I mean, the guys loading the trucks, that's what I had. I didn't drive. Those guys also work hard a different way. But
Yeah.
there's a orthopedic cost. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I got out. But it was also good because it was a part-time job with really good benefits, which is hard to find. So you would work like 4 or 5 hours, but you would get like really good health insurance and a retirement package and everything else. A lot of those guys had other jobs. And at the time, I did try to start writing. That was actually I wrote a novel while loading trucks for UPS. It was bad, and it did not sell or go anywhere. This is before self-publishing was a viable thing. It's like '98. It's before
So
e-readers. Before
yeah, yeah,
e-readers,
yeah.
you
Before
just
the yeah.
before the Kindle. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
when self-publishing became possible, but it wasn't until closer to 2010, 2012,
Right.
something like that. Um,
So were you querying it like for traditional publishing?
I did one or two places, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Like
Yeah.
I literally wrote a book and then I checked it for typos and then I thought it was done. And I didn't really understand how to create. I didn't really understand it until like 2 years ago, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I really thought that was good enough and it really wasn't.
Yeah.
I had never taken a course in writing. I just was just arrogant enough to think I could pump out a book. And
Well, hey, honestly, but you did, right? I love
yeah,
there's this lecture series on writing from Brandon Sanderson that's on his
I
YouTube
love
and it's
it. I
free,
love
right?
it. I love it.
Same. But I love it in like the very first one he talks about like, listen, the biggest kind of chasm of milestones between like four writers is not like new writer versus New York Times. No, it's people that want to write a book compared to people that have written a book,
Yeah, yeah,
that there's so many more people that want to than that actually complete the task. So if you complete the task at all, like kudos to you. And I'm like,
yeah.
well, kudos to me then.
I love those lectures. I recommend
Yeah.
them all the time. And Sanderson is not my favorite writer.
Right.
I've read the wrong stuff of his, I think. I read the Reckoner stuff and I did not like it. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
generally like YA very much.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to learn how to write and you don't want to spend any money, watch those lectures and listen to like the first 10 seasons of Writing Excuses, and that is huge value there.
Yeah.
Huge. And just listening to him say like, yeah, the book that you see is like my 12th draft. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? That was
Yeah.
an eye opener for me. Like, and I think
Right.
every writer knows this, but as a non-writer, how are you going to know? How do you find that out? I
Yeah.
didn't know, but I listened to Brandon Sanderson. I was like, okay, I'm doing this wrong. So when I wrote Wistful Ascending and I published it, um, it really was like draft number 3 at most, right? I checked for typos, fixed a couple things, and I put it on Amazon. And then I was like, this isn't as good as I wanted it to be. So then I spent a year and a half rewriting it and watching the Sanderson lectures and watching Writing Excuses and listening to writings and rewriting it and reconstructing and hiring an editor. Right, I went through the whole thing. I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have picked a new project, but instead, I fixed up my old project and got it back out there.
That's
So
pretty awesome, actually.
yeah,
And I love that we're able to do that as like self-published authors. But
yeah, no, yeah. There are specific advantages to that. There's advantages to being self-published for anyone, and huge
yeah,
disadvantages. I always tell people, if you can get a Tor contract, take it, 100%,
sure.
because you're just getting in every bookstore, just getting on every list of new releases from Taurus. You can't replicate that. But there's huge advantages because like if this book didn't sell, like book 2, book 3 would never have come out if I had been with Tor. But like I can
Yeah.
write 25 books,
Right.
no one
Yeah.
can stop me. It's like,
Have you, speaking of like 25 books, I read with a friend, well, my mother was really, she loves like thrillers. She was reading like the Dirk Pitt, Clive Cussler books. Have you ever, yeah. And I've read like some of the later ones, like Sahara, that was a Matthew McConaughey film. All right, all
yeah,
right,
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
right.
yep, yep.
I mean, and that one's not bad. But I read the very first Dirk Pitt novel. Wow. Like, what an eye opener. And like it's so a product of its times also.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
talking about how
yeah.
some things
Don't
don't
age well.
translate well. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I've read a lot of old stuff, right? Like you read like John Carter of Mars or like
Hmm.
Tarzan. I mean, Tarzan's genre fiction, kind of. It's also kind of racist, but that's another story. Um, um, yeah. No, you read all these
So,
old stuff. I reread Lensman recently. I loved Lensman when I was a kid. Doc Smith, old classic space opera. The kind of space opera where they're in a ship, they get lost in space, and there's a whole floor of people. They have to figure out where they are, so they're all taking out slide rules to do the calculations because it's written in like the 40s,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they're like
yeah.
flying through space with slide rules. It's amazing, but it's also like
That's
really not
awesome.
good. It's really not good by
That's
modern
kind of crazy to
standards.
think about. Like just how like yeah, that's wild that they didn't have
Yeah,
a concept of like computers at that time
no,
and
no.
like now yeah.
I don't know when he wrote those because it was a long time ago. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that he just didn't. Other stuff in there is anyway good
So
stuff.
you never took any like creative writing classes like at all while you were at school, like doing the philosophy, anything? I mean, you must
No,
have written papers for philosophy at least.
yeah, but that's different.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because
it
a
is.
philosophy paper, you're doing an analysis of a concept, you're doing a logical argument, basically, right?
Yeah,
You're supporting with evidence, but it's not about like passive voice, active voice,
yeah,
purple prose, non-purple
yeah,
prose, dialogue tags. Even the grammar is not the same. because all the grammar you need for a fiction book is all about like things like dialogue tags and em dashes. All you need in a philosophy is like how do I format my footnotes, and everything else is just you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean. So I did a lot of writing, but I didn't do a lot of. I don't think there's as much. People say, "Oh, it's writing is writing." No, no. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of crossover. And I didn't really take a lot of creative writing. I didn't take any creative writing classes in college. I took like one in high school. It's a long
Mm-hmm.
time, but that's a long time ago. Um, and then I still haven't. Right? I did the Brandon Sanderson lectures, and I did a lot of. I found a huge value, and I recommend this to writers. Is I had a Discord server that's defunct now, but I was on it, and a bunch of people you'd put up a short, like a chapter or like a short story, and people would rip it apart on Google Docs, like just with comments and saying like almost word by word, but definitely line by line, and having like 10 different people rip through your stuff line by line on Google Docs, because it's not that you can have them do that for every chapter of your book, because your book is presumably 40 chapters, and that's just not going to happen. But you will learn so much having one chapter ripped apart by people, and it teaches you so many things. Like they'll find all kinds of flaws in your writing, and
Yeah.
you will learn that you can't take all their advice.
Yes.
Right, which is
Yeah.
also a super important lesson for a writer. Someone will say like this, there's too much action, and someone else will say there's not enough action, and you realize, oh, this isn't
Mm-hmm.
like a universal absolute thing I can fix. I've got to like figure out what I want, but then they'll also catch stuff where you just need to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The server was really good because people would say like this word isn't good here, and someone will like hit like +1, +1, +1. Okay,
Yeah.
4 of you thought that was the wrong word. It's probably the wrong word. Like at some
Right.
point, So that was super useful. That was super
Yeah.
useful, and doing it to other people is also really useful. Like tearing apart other people's chapters is really
Yeah.
helpful to develop your skills as a writer. Why did this paragraph not work for me? You figure it out even if someone else wrote it, you can apply that to your own stuff. So I spent a year doing stuff like that, really. Immensely valuable. And I don't know that I would pay for a college degree at this point to try
Yeah.
to replicate that. It's like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
anyway. I mean, I'm not. I don't have time. I have books to publish, and I have a day job, so
All right.
that's not
Right.
gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I've heard from some people that like they're going into MFA programs and they're more accepting and helpful with genre fiction. But I've heard from other people that like they're so focused on literary fiction and that's not what they want to write that it wasn't necessarily that helpful. We were talking just for a moment before that we both like this Cradle series by Will White, and he has an MFA and he's said before that like what was valuable about it was it forced him to write and to write a lot. But like other than that, he's said like maybe it wasn't the most,
I would
but
love. So if I had infinite time and resources, I would love to put together a online how to become a decent genre writer
yeah.
curriculum, right? And I was thinking about like what kind of class, like how to use Canva, right? Like you'd have
Oh, yeah,
couple
sure.
semesters on marketing yourself, how to use social media for dummies.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a jerk on Twitter. Or that's
Right.
like half the course right there. So don't be a jerk on Twitter. Um, but then like I want to see like craft courses where you really sit down and like tear apart things like but the basics,
mm-hmm.
the sort of the uncontroversial basics. I think there is a core of things you can learn about how to be a better writer. They're going to work from like passive and active voice. Use fewer adverbs when you can. Instead of an adjective and an adverb, use a better verb. Will usually work better, right? Like stuff like that, and really drill down some stuff about story structure and make sure every scene turns. Like there's so much stuff you could learn and put in a course that doesn't have to be highfalutin or aimed at someone trying to get like a Pulitzer,
Right.
because most of us aren't. I mean, well, many of us aren't. Like I'm not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
I mean,
after a
that's not. It's
Pulitzer.
not. Yeah,
But I do believe that kind of going back to talking about college. You've mentioned to me that you have a college roommate that has won a Hugo.
yeah. So I think it's funny, and I mean it in the nicest possible way. I was in college. I was a philosophy major, and there was a guy who like lived near me because we dormed near each other, and he was my roommate in the dorms for a year, and then in grad school for 3 years. And he's an electrical engineering major, so nothing to do with writing. And as far as I know, I don't even know that he was reading a lot of science fiction at the time. But we played some D&D together. He was a super nice guy, but like we didn't really share a ton of interests. Named John Chu, and John Chu. And so one day, and we lost touch again. Nothing negative. Just
Sure,
we,
sure,
we
yeah,
we
it's not.
graduated before social media. So before social media, if you knew someone, you didn't ever if you unless you really went out of your way, you weren't going to talk to them again, right? You'd have to
Right.
like write them a letter and put a stamp
Mm-hmm.
on it, right? That wasn't going to happen. He was a good guy, but we didn't have that much in common. One day I'm sitting there, I'm like looking at like Tor.com's website, and Hugo Award winning Hugo the John Chu's short story won a Hugo, and I'm like, this couldn't possibly, because it's not that uncommon a name. It's like, could this
Sure.
possibly be the same guy? Like, is it
It's
even
the
conceivable?
same
And like,
guy.
electrical engineer, and I'm like, so I go to his website. I'm like, dude, I know, 100%. So we're in like very casual touch. Like we'll exchange a Facebook message like every year or two. So he's a phenomenal writer. Complete, and it's funny because he actually his most recent story, which I think is up for the Hugo this year. Not 100% sure, but it
Mm-hmm.
is a superhero story.
Oh,
But you
hey.
you couldn't get a more different superhero story. He's a very literary writer. Like
Right, right.
he's really trying to touch on. He's not trying to like talk about like superpowers. He's really trying to use fantasy elements or science fiction elements to get at more basic truths about the human condition much more directly. And for me, that's like an aside. Like I'll make a nod in that direction here and there, but that's not the core of what I'm doing. So his prose is much more beautiful than mine. And he's definitely like you can see like if you read his stuff, it's like this stuff should be winning awards in a different way, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's cool though because I'm like I've like released 3 books and I'm like one step, what do they call it? 1 degree of separation from a Hugo Award
Yeah,
winner, which is kind of
yeah.
cool.
That's pretty good.
So John's a great
How is
guy.
it that the electrical engineer is talking about the human condition while the philosophy major is like, no?
There's a lot of weird ethics in my books that people usually overlook, but a couple of reviewers, I'm thinking of one in particular, really dig the moral conundrums I put my characters in, and the I try to make it a little more subtle than it could be, I guess. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I mean, my goal very explicitly was to write an action story first. So my first goal was to have you like laughing and kind of excited when you read my books. And everything else was always supposed to be secondary to that, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
overall goal is when you're done with the book, you should feel like I just had fun.
Mm-hmm.
And if more
Mm-hmm.
than that happens, that's phenomenal, but that's not what I'm going for. I'm not going for that wasn't fun, but I really learned something about myself. You shouldn't ever feel that way after reading one of my things. If you
That's
have
actually
something's
how,
wrong with one of us, if that happens.
right? That's not that dissimilar from how Travis Baldree, who wrote Legends and Lattes, has described like cozy fantasy is like you should finish a cozy story and feel good, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. And with a cozy, you also never really feel bad in the middle because it's cozy. They're low stakes. You don't feel that tension that, oh my God, how are they going to survive? Because that doesn't happen in a cozy. That's what a cozy is. Or even a cozy murder. You don't really care about the dead person in a cozy mystery, right? They weren't very nice or they weren't the main character. The detective's not, right? That's cozy. So yeah, so it's kind of like that. But when you write literature, literary stuff, your goal is to have someone have like thoughts. And if it was fun,
yeah,
that's great, but
yeah,
that's not the
yeah.
goal. The goal wasn't the fun. The goal is the thoughts or the feelings.
Right,
And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. That's phenomenal I love that people do that, right? But that's just not what I've
right.
read some of that stuff. Right? I had periods in my life where I read a lot of literature, but mostly I like
More
reading
the
the fun stuff and I like writing the
right,
fun stuff. So you
more
gotta know,
escapist.
you got to
Right.
know exactly, 100%. You got to know who you
Yeah.
are and what you want to be. You
Yep.
know. Uh,
So, philosophy major, UPS, wrote first book, um, for a while you were a high school chemistry teacher
it's
for a
because when I
bit?
was in college, before I was philosophy major, I was pre med. So I was pre med for a couple of years. So I took
Oh,
a bunch of science classes because I was pre med. That's what you do.
sure.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized I didn't want to be a doctor. But at that point, I already had like 2 years of science under my belt, which was enough to get a job as a chemistry teacher in Baltimore in the late 90s because they were desperate. When
Yeah.
they hired me, I said, they give you the mirror test. They were so desperate for
Can you
warm
fog
bodies.
this? Yeah,
They
yeah,
hold the
yeah.
mirror up to your face. If you fog the mirror, you got a job. So I ended up being a high school chemistry teacher, which was very enlightening experience to teach chemistry in inner city, really inner city Baltimore, like one of the lower performing, one of the most disadvantaged neighborhoods in Baltimore, which is saying a lot because the
Mm-hmm.
city as a whole is not in great shape. But I was
Mm-hmm.
in one of the most disadvantaged neighborhoods by a variety of indicators, heroin usage, AIDS rate, rates, poverty. My kids were coming from blocks where half the houses were boarded up. If you drive through their neighborhoods. So I saw a lot. I had a very interesting experience there. I probably learned a lot. I don't know if I taught a lot. I tried. I taught
Yeah.
some. I taught something, I guess. But yeah, I did that for 10 years, and then my younger brother actually said, "Hey, you're smart. You could program computers." And I had had enough of teaching. I was so burnt out. It wasn't even funny. And so my younger brother, lovely guy, offered to take me on to a software project and have me start working for him, and I did. And that was fantastic for me because I got
Yep.
paid a lot more, and I was a much more pleasant life
Work experience. Yeah.
work
Yeah. Yeah.
experience. Yeah,
Work
yeah,
environment. Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. It seems like teaching really takes it out of people. Like, great. Kudos to teachers, but not so. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of people that do it like for their entire career anymore. But yeah. So
It's hard.
Code Monkey, you've self-professed, right? What kind of code are you writing?
So I write mostly in Java I work for Intercontinental Exchange, which is it's the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange. I actually went to the New York Stock Exchange closing
Oh,
bell like 2 weeks
that's
ago
neat.
because if you're an
That's neat.
employee, you can just go. You can just like say,
You can
"Hey, I
just
want to
do
go,"
that. You could, yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
but you can't. It's like a tourist. You can't just walk up to the New York Stock Exchange and say, "I want to see the closing bell." They won't let you in. They don't sell tickets. You have to have like
Mm.
a connection. But I am the connection. My wife is like,
Mm-hmm.
"Why can't we?" So we actually did. It was really cool. It's a thing you can see it on like CNBC or whatever, like the closing bell. And I was standing right there. We sell. I'm in a part of the company that sells financial data. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. It's not the kind of thing I can share with my kids. It's like at the end of the day, I've written an application. It's not something anyone else in my life is ever going to understand. Other
Right.
than my coworkers, right? Like I'm not saying there's no value to it, but it's not something I can talk about at parties because no, I try, it's database loader, it's multi-threaded now. Like nobody cares, right? Like that's not going to mean anything. So, um,
I
yeah.
feel you. Like I most well my like what I say at parties is I make websites, but
Oh,
like my a little bit more complicated in a similar way. But it's funny that you mentioned too you were pre med and but you did a bunch of chemistry. It made me think about my dad, and I'll just relate this really quickly. Like he had
yeah.
a job that was great at parties because he did enough chemistry that he became a chemical engineer,
Uh-huh.
and then an available job after that was in aerospace. He was for like his entire career after school an environmental control and life support systems engineer for the space shuttle.
Wow. That is
That's a fun one at
cool.
parties,
That's
right?
really cool. Yeah, that is
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. That is
I feel
awesome.
like the most interesting fact about me is not actually about me. Like, it's my
Oh,
dad.
that's that's
That's pretty awesome though.
yeah.
But it's interesting too. Like I think there's a lot of code monkeys that write, right? I know that Daniel B. Green, who's also on YouTube, I think he was actually a software developer before he kind of went full time YouTube, and also he's put out some books. Andy
Yep.
Ware, who wrote The Martian and Project Hail Mary, which I love those books. He was a former software developer. Do you think there's something about like writing code that makes us want to be like, what if we just actually write stories instead? Like,
I don't know. So Zach Argyle is some kind of engineer, and I was interviewed by A.R. Witham, who wrote Legend of Blackjack, which is a really fun book. But he interviewed me and Zach on like consecutive, like I don't know if it's consecutive weeks or consecutive months, and he told Zach like, "Really, you're an engineer? Like, how does that side of the brain make you like, and you still can write?" And then he asked me the same question like a few weeks later, and I'm like, "Maybe your presumption is wrong here because this is the second
yeah,
time you've had the same exchange, and I don't know, it
right.
doesn't seem to be panning out for you." So someone else asked me this on a stream not too long ago, whether there's like a connection between coding and I'll tell you honestly, I think part of it is just I don't know the answer, but I think part of it is that if you are a software developer, a good chance you have the financial flexibility to write. I don't have to work a second job. I don't have to come home and like go drive an Uber to pay my bills because my day job is pretty lucrative. I mean, I'm not rich, but you know what I mean. Like, I
Yeah, yeah.
I can live in like sort of normal lifestyle, and I don't have to
Right.
like work a second job. I don't have to like sweat and take extra shifts or anywhere, and I can afford to blow some money on a cover artist that I shouldn't really be able to afford. And like I'm pretty sure I shouldn't really speak for Zach, but I'm pretty sure he's in a pretty similar position because every once in a while something will happen to him. Like a bunch of his books got returned. He's like, I'm fine. Like I'm not gonna like not be able to feed my kids this month. And I'm pretty sure he's making money on his day job. So I think that's actually kind of part of it. Like if you there's a country where if you're not making really good money, life is really hard. I don't
Yeah.
I I don't want to get all political and socialist on you, but
No, that
uh,
you're absolutely right, and it's making me want to read some Hopepunk. You know.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did
So
I did an interview once because like so all my books take place on largely take place on the space station. And it's like this advanced, very futuristic space station with very advanced technology. And I'm like, yes, everyone has plenty to eat and everyone has health care because they're rich and they
yeah,
can do that. And people, are you trying to make a political statement? I'm like, maybe a little bit, you know,
yeah, right.
maybe a
I
little bit.
think yeah, I
It's
like
it.
that.
These aren't political books, right? This is not the main thrust of it, but I'll stick stuff in there on occasion. So maybe I shouldn't,
Yeah.
but
No, I think like let's be aspirate. I like the kind of aspirational sci-fi of Star Trek
Star Trek,
versus the
yes,
sort of
yes,
like more. I don't know. I'm not even sure the right word, but like Star Wars has a bunch of like really crappy elements in it, whereas like Star Trek
yeah.
is more like
I
hey, like this is like possible, maybe like something to at least aspire to.
Yeah, I like Star Wars a lot, but I think the world
Yeah,
building is terrible. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like
true.
why like Andor? Do you see Andor?
I haven't seen Andor
Okay,
yet.
Andor
No.
was really good. I don't know if it was great Star Wars, but it was really like well written, well acted and stuff. But they're like
Yeah.
all these people are basically prisoner like assembling like machines, and I'm like, you could have droids do that. Why have
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
security and all these people being held in horrible conditions with all these guards watching over them? That's very expensive. Like even if
Mm-hmm.
you're a terrible empire, right? Like you're evil, but
Mm-hmm.
still it's just expensive and like complicated, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they can rebel and you're killing them and you have to provide them health care. Why don't you just have droids? Like what can people there's no answer, and stuff like that really bugs me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get really
Or
annoyed. So,
I think the stuff that I'm like, really? Are some of the creatures in Star Wars, but
well,
like, they're kind of fun.
yeah, yeah.
So
The,
like, I don't know. Anyway.
the ecosystems don't make any sense. Like these
Well, listen, I
giant
don't have a good segue for my next question,
shoot.
but you let me know ahead of time that you sawed Paul Auster's desk in half, and I need this
You
story.
you were asking me for good stories, and I'm trying to think. I have some good stories. Most of them are not fit for not safe for work, but this one is. So,
Yeah.
19. What's? Let me set the stage. Probably 1987 or 1988. I lived in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn. I went to school in Manhattan. One of my best friends, John Rabinowitz, was he lived in Park Slope. Paul Auster. Paul Auster is a pretty well-known literary writer. He's like if you know literature, you know Paul Auster. He wrote very highly acclaimed books. He's a famous. You could go to New York City. You go to like the guys selling books in Greenwich Village off blankets on the sidewalk. You'd find Paul Auster's books there. Like grad students getting rid of their books because they're poor and need food. So Paul, he rented my friend's basement, the kind of a garden apartment, as his writing office. So he
Oh.
worked out of my friend's house, and so he wanted to move his desk. So he got me and my friend and like two other kids from my high school, and he's like, I just pay you each $20 just to move my shit because, excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, that's
We
okay. No, you're fine.
we didn't cover the four-letter word policy. Um,
You're fine.
so I think he's just trying to save money, right? Because like I don't want to pay movers. I'm going to pay a bunch of high school kids $20 each. This is $20 in 1988 meant a lot more than $20
Sure.
now. But I'm like, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
So we get his
Yeah.
desk. We can't get it out the door, right? So we're like, well, what do we do? So we're trying to figure out like we can't fit it out the door. So we finally someone's like, we just got to saw it in half. And Paul's like, what? Like, yeah, well, how do we get it out? We saw it in half, two pieces. It'll be each side had like four legs, so you'd still
Yeah.
work. And he's like, fine. So we get out the saw, we start sawing, and they turn it over to start sawing, and they're through the desk, right? So it's his like precious writing desk. And I look down, I'm like, these pieces are screwed together. And everyone looks at me like, what? And I'm like, yeah, look, we're like dumb kids, right? We don't know anything. And I'm like, those parts are screwed together. If we undid the screws, I bet we could just take the desk apart and take it out the door, and then take it to where he's going. And then when we get there, I bet we could screw them back together, and he'd have a desk again. And everyone's looking at me like, oh yeah, because it had to come in somehow, right? Like
Yeah.
it didn't grow inside the office. So I not only did I saw partway through, I don't know if I was holding the saw,
Yeah.
but I was there when we saw. But
Yes.
I saved his desk. I saved the desk of a literary giant at the tender age of 17 or 18. I actually think he might be considered a literary giant. I don't know. I'm not assessing that. But he is a legitimately like well-known author among literary
Yeah.
circles, and I saved his desk. And who knows, without that desk, whose career might have been totally the same, probably, but maybe it would have been different. I don't know.
No. I think yes, that's your earliest contribution
My
to the
earliest
literary
contribution to the
world.
literary world. Yeah, I kept I gave a Hugo Award winner. I paid half his rent for a while, or he paid half my rent, and I saved Paul Auster's desk. So I don't know, something like
Maybe
that. But
that's like yeah. I mean, well, but he also gave you $20, so maybe you
yeah,
just actually need to find like odd jobs to do for writers, right?
I think I'm done
Um,
with those. Yeah, I
yeah,
think it was $20. Yeah, I was so happy to make the 20. I was like, this is cool. Like I can just get money for free. I was like, kill an afternoon moving
right.
stuff.
There you go.
It's good to be young in Park Slope. But
So I've got one more
shoot,
thing to do with you, kind of a recurring segment that I think I'm calling "How Dare They." So I'm
oh
going to
jeez,
read to you. I asked you ahead of time for one of your favorite books, and I'm going to read a 1-star review from your favorite book. And at any point, you can kind of cut
ah,
me off and say, "How dare
ah,
they?"
ah, ah,
etc.
ah.
You ready?
I guess it's gonna
All
hurt.
right.
It's gonna be very
So it's
painful,
The Man Who Never Missed,
man.
the first of Steve Perry's Matador series,
Yes, yes.
reveals Perry as an efficient wordsmith who prefers taut, fast-paced, laconic prose in constructing a narrative for maximum readability. What it does not yet reveal him to be is a particularly advanced storyteller. The book doesn't so much spin an exciting yarn as it simply describes the rise of Emil Kadaji,
Yeah.
a deserter from the Confederation Army who turns on his former masters in Splinter Cell fashion. The book may be mildly adequate time killer if all you want is something to do in an
Ooh.
afternoon when no one's around to play Battlefield.
Ouch. Ouch.
Right? This guy's
Ouch.
tough. This
I'm
guy.
not-
Go ahead.
I'm trying to think. Like the first part is true. Like that's Steve Perry. Like very like straightforward, stripped down prose. Very laconic.
Mm-hmm.
Laconic is right. Um, is the story good? That's you know what? Like I feel like the description is kind of fair, but the description to me is a 3-star, not a 1-star. Like if you said it was a good way to spend an afternoon, I'm like that's a 3-star read. Like
Fair, fair.
like I wouldn't call that a 1-star. And if it's someone's 3-star read, I can't really argue with them. But 1-star just seems harsh. Like what were you expecting? Like did you look at the
Yeah.
cover? It's about a guy who like
Yeah.
shoots darts and like takes out an empire, like out of his hands. Like
Yeah.
if you were expecting like depth and emotional like content,
Right.
you shouldn't have you
You
should
were
have
barking
looked
up
at
the
the
wrong tree.
yeah, it kind of bugs me sometimes when people do that, right? They're like, they read a book that's very clearly one thing, and then they get pissed because it's the thing it said it was going to be, and that happens to me
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah.
People read my books and they're like, oh, this was, there's like there's a villain who's twirling his mustache, and it really bugged me, and I'm like, there's there's a there's a there's a giant shark on the cover, and you expected the villain to not have like mustache twirling lines, like, what did you think you were reading? Like,
Yeah.
did you think it was like Pride and Prejudice in space? Like, give me, cut me some slack here, right? Like I was very clear about the kind
Yeah.
of book. There's a
Yeah.
giant shark behind it. And it's like far behind him. It's really big. I don't know what you
Pride and
thought.
Prejudice with sharks. That's the
Yeah,
new.
yeah.
That's what
But
we're doing.
there's a Pride and Prejudice and Superheroes just came out. I just saw an ad for it, and I'm like,
What?
oh, yeah. Well, there's Pride and Prejudice with zombies, and there's
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice and Superheroes. I don't know nothing about this book. It could be terrible, or it could be amazing. I have no idea. But I saw that, I'm like, I might have to read that just on
Right.
principle,
Yeah. Yeah.
see how it works. So I don't know, but that's a shame that person didn't love Steve Perry. I love those books. I like the martial arts themes, and you combine martial arts and space opera, and I get very happy.
Right. No, I like doing this because to me it's like a reminder and maybe hopefully a reminder for my guests and definitely listeners that like no story is for everyone, you know? No story is
That
for everyone.
I mean, it's pretty common advice, right? I even think maybe Sanderson has said it, like take your favorite books and read their 1-star reviews. Generally speaking,
Mhm.
like because however much you like it, it's not going to work for someone, and people, yeah, exactly what you said. People, there are always going to be people who, and I've gotten my fair share of 1-star reviews, and they still hurt. They still hurt. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
uh, it still hurts,
But
but.
dogs. If you've listened and you've liked Joe and you want to, check out Wistful Ascending, where can people find you online, Joe? Or JCM, that is how they should be looking for
I
you.
have a website, jcmberne.com, and if you go
Hmm.
there, you can click on links. You can find my books. If you just put my name in Amazon, you can find my books. Oh, they're all on Amazon. I'm not wide. They're on Kindle Unlimited. If you have KU, you can read them for free. Free, meaning you pay your, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I have a YouTube channel. If you are interested in Wistful Sending, I tell people, look, I'm not going to pitch it, but I will tell you, go onto YouTube, type Wistful Sending in the search bar, which is somewhere around there, and check out. I have a number of video reviews from lovely people who have liked it, and you can watch those, and let them convince you. They're the reviewers. I'm not. Let them convince you to read the book. Give it a chance,
There you
and
go.
yeah.
Also, yeah, and you've got a couple short stories that people can check out on your website, JCM
Yep. If
Berne.
you
They can sign up for your newsletter, right?
If you sign up for my newsletter, you will get three things. You will get a short story right away. You will get a link to another short story that is free from in your first response email. And the third thing is a guarantee you will get almost no newsletters from me because I do not maintain my newsletter. I don't have the strength. I don't have the spoons for it. I don't know. But
You'll get the short stories and then nothing
I
else.
send out I don't think I send out like 3 a year. I think I'm at a pace of maybe it's 3 a year, but I'm terrible. So you won't get much, but you also won't get bothered much. So sign up. I don't know, but I will send one out. I will send one out when the next book comes out. So you can decide to buy it or not.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. I mean, yeah, you get some short stories. You get check out the video reviews. See if you want to spend some time with Rohan and his friends, right?
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Joe, thank you for being here. This was actually a very fun conversation.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Appreciate it.
Me too. I appreciate it. Glad to be on.
And thank you for watching. And if no one's told you yet today, you're an absolute legend.